Menopausal and perimenopausal women, listen up. It's time to take control of your health and comfort, and Winona is here to help. Winona is a telemedicine company for menopause care who believes that your symptoms are real, important, and deserve to be taken seriously. And for many women, this starts with hormone replacement therapy. Winona's HRT is made with plant-based, bioidentical hormones rather than synthetic ones, so it better aligns with your body to offer relief from hot flashes, weight gain, and other uncomfortable symptoms. 80% of women who use Winona find relief within just 90 days. So, what are you waiting for? Get started today. Visit buywinona.com today to start your free visit. With free shipping and the ability to pause or cancel at any time, your path to wellness has zero obligations. Use code SPRING24 at buywinona.com for 25% off your first treatment plan. That's BYWINONA.com for 25% off. Winona. Menopause care made easy. Summer is the season of hot temperatures, outdoor adventures, and refreshing water activities. Summer is also the season of rough on your feet, causing dry, cracked heels and toes. Introducing Babyfoot, the original exfoliation foot peel that contains 16 natural extracts formulated to remove dead skin cells in 3 easy steps. Apply the booties, relax for an hour, then wash your feet. In 14 days, you've got baby smooth skin and your feet have never been softer. Letting dead skin cells build up over time is hazardous to your foot health. Our professional-grade DIY products, like our original exfoliation foot peel, our men's foot peel, or our moisturizing mask, are some of the best foot care products on the market, created with your foot health in mind. Pamper yourself with a spa day from the comfort and convenience of your own home with Babyfoot. If you want a chemical-free, easy-to-use exfoliating process from the company that created the original foot peel, it's time to treat yourself to Babyfoot. Go to babyfoot.com and use the code SUMMERFEET24 and get 20% off your first order with Babyfoot. That's babyfoot.com and use the code SUMMERFEET24.
Hello, and welcome to Too Stupid to Live, a podcast that reviews romance novels $5 and under. I'm your host, Becky Feldman, and Happy New Year! I wanted to start 2019 out with a bang, and for this instance, I mean that in a non-sexy way as well, because this episode is super special for me as a reader, and I know that it will be special for you. My guest today is a major figure in Romancelandia, author and columnist Sarah MacLean. I think most people can agree that she is one of the top historical romance novelists around. She has a new series out, The Bare Knuckle Bastards. I just read the first book, Wicked and the Wallflower, and you know when you're reading something and you get so obsessed with a story and it's all you think about, and you don't eat, you don't bathe, you're just obsessed and in agony about how these two characters are going to end up together. That was this book for me. So Sarah is also the co-host of the podcast Fated Mates, which discusses Cressley Cole's paranormal series Immortals After Dark, and you probably know her from her monthly column about romance novels in the Washington Post. I can't believe she found my little podcast and wanted to be a guest on it, and it was truly an amazing experience for me. When we finished, I felt how Rocky felt when he raced up the stairs of the Philadelphia Museum of Art. So our interview is actually going to be broken up into 2 episodes. The first episode is Sarah discussing her career, the history of romance novels, and how feminism and romance coincide. And for the second part, which will be released next week, we will be reviewing Loving the Secret Billionaire by Adriana Anders. So please enjoy part 1 of my interview with Sarah MacLean. Sarah, welcome to Too Stupid to Live.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just excited. I'm always excited when new romance podcasts happen because I still feel like we're in the Wild West in podcasting and romance. And I'm very excited to be here with you, especially after our Twitter conversation.
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, I'm so honored you're here, and I'm so excited to talk about the history of romance novels after me putting out some questions on Twitter about what constitutes a romance novel. But I do have listeners who aren't romance readers, some of them, and so I would just love to introduce you to them. So right now I'd like you to tell me a bit about yourself and how you first got into reading romance novels.
Sure. Well, I'm a romance novelist, but I'm really a romance reader first and foremost and forever. I started reading romances when I was probably way too young to be reading romances. I was probably 9 or 10. I had an older sister who was a big romance reader and was a subscriber to the Harlequin romance boxes. Harlequin would send these boxes of books once a month. You were a monthly subscriber, and they had like 4 or 5, small, what we call category romances in them. And she would hide them under the bed from my parents, and I never had that instinct. Mm-hmm. So I would like pull them out of the bed and from under the bed, and I would read them. And so romance was, once I found romance, I never went back. Mm-hmm. Which is why I think I've been a romance reader for a long time. I am a romance critic. I review romances for the Washington Post and other places. And now I write my own.
Yeah, and I believe you started writing romance based someone dared you to. Is that right?
Yeah, my first book is actually a YA, a young adult romance called The Season. And I live in New York City, and I had a lot of friends in publishing, and we were all out at a bar, and we were talking about, some big YA novel in the late thousands. And I said something like, well, I could write that. And my friend was like, well, I dare you to. And I had, just enough alcohol to go home and try it. And that night I wrote the first chapter of what would become my first book. And then after The Season, I realized I really just wanted to write the naughty bits. So I left YA behind and started writing historical romance. So that's what I do, historicals.
That's awesome. I first of all, I loved Wicked and the Wallflowers so much. It was so good.
Thank you.
And so I'm curious as to why you gravitated towards historical romance.
I think I gravitated toward historical romance because I started with historical romance. It's where I started. It's where the genre really started.
Right.
And I know we're going to get into it, but the genre started. The modern genre started with historicals in the 1970s, but the genre itself, one might argue, started with Jane Austen, when I guess it wasn't historicals. They were contemporaries then, but they're historicals to us now. So, the Regency, which is that time period, that Austen time period, has the kind of what I believe are the best of the genre, at least the best of the grandmothers of the genre wrote Regencies. So I think it's just sort of, that's what I read, that's what I cut my teeth on, and now that's what I write.
Awesome. Well, I guess this kind of segues into getting into kind of the history of romance novels, because I think I have a broad understanding, but my question is where did romance novels begin in terms of both Jane Austen and then publishers creating literature for a female audience?
So I think that this is a really interesting question, because I do really believe that if you look at the family tree of the genre, and it should be said, there aren't that many people who do look at the family tree of the genre, because the genre is really, it's people don't pay attention to it. People don't respect it. It's for a lot of reasons that I'm sure we'll get into. But if we look at the family tree of the genre, I think we can obviously you can look back at Greek myth and Shakespeare, and love is ubiquitous, right? It's a never ending tale. But if you're looking at the arc of the real romance novel, you're looking at, I think, Austen and Bronte, and then as you sort of move forward through the Gothic novels of the late 19th century, and then into the early 20th century with people like Georgia O'Hare, who was writing and Barbara Cartland kind of edged into it, and Victoria Holt. And there were a lot of these sort of women writers writing women's issues and also love stories. We, as a genre, talk a lot about happily ever after as being the cornerstone of the romance novel. It's not a romance without a happily ever after. Don't at me.
I completely agree. Yes.
It's just it could be a love story, it could be a romantic novel, it could be women's fiction, it could be a lot of other things, but it's not romance, capital R romance. But then in the 1970s, a woman named Kathleen Woodiwiss, who was a housewife in the Midwest, who I can only assume had a husband who was reading a lot of Westerns and leaving them around the house, decided that she was going to write a novel. And so what she did is she wrote a adventure novel, and she put a woman at the center of it. And nobody had ever done that before. And what I mean by that is nobody had ever done that before and also had the woman have sex on the page, have pleasurable sex on the page, and then also triumph. Because prior to this, you had books like Valley of the Dolls or there was sex on the page with women, there were sexually active women on the page prior to that in novels. But typically if a woman had sex, particularly if she had sex for pleasure and had an orgasm, she was going to die or she was a villain, right? Like she was either a Bond villain or going to die of a drug overdose in Valley of the Dolls. So Kathleen Woodiwiss put a woman at the center of the story. She said, I'm going to write an adventure novel. I'm going to put the heroine is going to be the main character. That book is The Flame and the Flower, and it is widely believed to be and pointed to as the first of the genre. And I think that's true. I also think it's the first of the genre. And then that sort of blew the doors wide open. So that manuscript, the story goes that manuscript landed on a slush pile at Avon Books, which at the time was they were printing mass market paperback format pulp novels and also reprints of classics. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, luck or whatever, fate, Kathleen sent the manuscript to Avon. An editor there picked it up and realized maybe we have a thing here. And they put it out. It was one of their very first original books. An Avon original, and it sold 2 million copies in the first year.
Wow.
And
yeah.
Publishing was like, wait, what? Wait, women, what? Women are buying books? And it was really smart, right? They packaged it small, so it could fit in a purse. It was priced well, so it could be purchased off the book rack at the local grocery store with the extra change from your local grocery shop, from your weekly shop. And there's a lot to talk about. And there are so many fascinating pieces of the genre because of how it's designed to be marketed. The covers all they're all very specifically designed so that not just readers know what's inside them, but the men who were unpacking the boxes, the stockers in the grocery stores, they had to be able to see right off the bat what kind of a book it is. And so they would then know immediately, this flower cover, this clinch cover means that it's a romance. So they would stock them all together.
I was reading the other day, didn't Playboy publish romance novels for a while or had some sort of influence on clinch covers?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
But that's really fascinating. Mm-hmm. I would be surprised if that were true. Mm-hmm. Because I do know that the clinch covers they've been around for a long time.
Right.
So yeah. I'm not sure that Playboy inspired the clinch cover. Mm-hmm. But it wouldn't surprise me if Playboy did some sort of erotic line or thing that's sort of romance adjacent, but
right, yeah.
Probably didn't have as many happily ever afters.
No, at least for women. So this is a weird question, but what constitutes a pulp novel?
You mean prior to
like prior to when before like romance novels were found in our grocery stores. Like you mentioned, like Avon was
Pulp
putting out like
Fiction.
Pulp Fiction. Like what I know, like I can picture it, but like what
Yeah,
exactly
you can
like
see
is
the
it?
covers.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question. I haven't really thought very hard about, like, there has to be surely someone much smarter than I in that world can give a much tighter answer. But I think Pulp Fiction is very much about it's about salacious sort of activities and sort of underrepresented activities and people in very short formats.
Mm-hmm.
I think pulp was at the time very much about format, like
Okay.
250 pages, a really tight plot. The skill of writing a really great pulp novel does not escape me. Like there's got to be, it has to be pretty challenging. But also with men at the center. When you look at old Harlequin was, of course, like one of the biggest pulp producers in the early days. And when you look at old Harlequin and Mills and Boon covers, like you can tell the difference between the romance and the pulp fiction in that, like, usually it's a male author. Usually the man is at the center of the story. Again, there's usually like a sexualized vixen. There's usually a mystery or a thriller component.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the books they used to sell them in vending machines.
Whoa.
There used to be Pulp Fiction vending machines, which is bonkers. And I wish they would come back.
That'd be amazing.
I know.
Like at an airport or something.
I think also like next to like cigarette machines in like truck stops and stuff. Like you could get a pack of cigarettes and your book.
Yeah. So as like romance novels have progressed to like what we read today, I guess I'm curious as to like how naughty like romance novels were in like the 70s versus, today.
They were pretty naughty. I mean, I think there was a language issue in that there were a lot of words that probably you wouldn't see. Like, I don't think you'd see like cock or tits or like, I think now we're a little more forthright with the language that we use. There's a reason why romance is often sort of you find people eye roll at the idea of a romance novel because of the purple prose, like, and the sort of the throbbing member is a good joke, everyone, but like I've never written a throbbing member, and we don't do that anymore. We don't use those words. But you have to think of the time as well, right? Like it's a fairly different experience. But I will say, there was a woman writing in the 70s and early 80s named Bertrice. I mean, she wrote for many, many years, but at the time, she was sort of a lion of the genre. Her name was Bertrice Small. She wrote a series of books called the Skye O'Malley series, all focused around, it was written in set in the 1600s, late 1500s, early 1600s. Skye was a female pirate. Who then became like captain of the high seas. She ran a battalion of ships. She went up against Queen Elizabeth. It was sort of a really like rollicking story. It was a great adventure story, but every book she either met the man she loved or the man she loved was sold into a harem in the Middle East and she had to go save him. It really sort of like flipped the script on all those like tropes. I mean, granted, incredibly problematic because writing a harem in the Middle East in the 1970s was surely problematic for lots of reasons. But putting that aside, like Bertrice Small really, changed the game. And I will say that I, as I said, had been reading a lot of romance novels for a long time when I stumbled upon a copy of All the Sweet Tomorrows, which is sort of late in the Skye O'Malley series in the early 90s. And there is a sex scene in the book. And it was the first time I'd read a sex scene where I knew I would get in trouble if my parents found out that I was reading it. And it's because it was so filthy. And so I think that, many people would be very surprised by like how naughty the books were and sexy the books were then. And I think like there's something to be said for the fact that like, of course they were sexy. centered female pleasure and sexual identity in such a powerful, important way that like you can't. The only way to do that successfully as an author is not to close the door. Like if you're going to start talking about like the power of the female orgasm in like in a feminist way, or at least put the female orgasm on the page in a way that we can sort of talk about women in the world, then she's gonna have to come hard.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't a family show.
Right. No.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because, there are like clean romances out there. Do you think like those types of, like those authors are like have the same kind of challenges to when it is like maybe more about the love than it is about the sex?
Sure. I mean, first of all, I would say clean romance isn't a great way. A lot of people use the phrase clean romance. I don't love it because it makes sex seem dirty, and sex is not dirty. It's a natural thing, and get it, girl. But there are a lot of writers who either don't feel that writing the sex is their strong suit, or don't feel that the sex is necessary to the book. And those kind of sweeter romances are a really, the trick to the romance novel isn't just about sex. I mean, it's about a lot of things. It's about women and women's bodies and the way that we think of the body as politic. It's about sex, of course, because romance and because relationships are about sex, power is about sex. Like, these books are very much, we say over and over again, they're by, for, and about women largely. I mean, now we're starting to see a real sort of burgeoning community of queer romance writers or male romance writers. But for the lion's share of the genre is by, for, and about women, and it certainly has been from the start. And I think, we have to start thinking about the fact that we have to acknowledge the fact that, like, for women, women's bodies and women's sexual identities have been so repressed and suppressed for so long that romance really is the only place where the female gaze is centered, where female sexuality is centered. And so to get back to your question with this sort of question of sweet versus spicy romance, there's a way to do it. And I mean, there are incredibly sexy books where the sex doesn't come until the very end, or the sex doesn't come at all. And it's really about like sexual tension. And I mean, like, we know this from being raised in a world where, I mean, I'm American, you sound American, I grew up here. Like, America's really repressed sexually, especially at the movies, right? But like, we've all been in a movie theater watching a movie and appreciated that there is like immense sexual tension on the screen in front of us, and nobody's taking their clothes off. Right?
Yeah.
And that's a romance novel. Like, unless you're writing erotic romance, technically the sex on the page is kind of a bonus.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the, excerpts that me or my guests will read on the show, like a lot of them aren't explicitly sex. It's like someone puts a finger in their mouth, or like someone's like eating food and it like looks sexy. And it's like that scene is sometimes like hotter than just like a sex scene.
Well, those are the hotter scenes, right? The scenes. I mean, I love the scene. I love that sort of first, the first look, the sort of all the firsts are really wonderful. And by the time you get to the sex, I mean, look, a great sex scene is a great sex scene, and like, we should appreciate them because they're very hard to write, and they matter to readers. But for me, it really is about all those sort of earlier pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah. Do you find those scenes harder to write, or?
Oh. Yeah. I mean, which scenes? Sex scenes, or
not sex scenes, but like the first signs of like sexual tension between two characters, when like the chemistry starts. Like, what kind of challenges are you faced when you have to write those scenes, like beginning of the book scenes?
For me, the beginning of the book scenes are almost easier. So there's this anthropologist named Desmond Morris, and he has this a theory. It's called the 12 Steps to Intimacy, and the concept is that as two beings, like, whatever, humans, monkeys, dogs, whatever, right, interact with each other. They have, if they're ultimately going to be, sexually involved, there's like a system in place. There are 12 steps for them to move from complete disinterest and not knowing each other to full intimacy. And it's like step 1 is like eye to body, and then eye to eye, and then voice to voice. And it sort of walks you through. It's a really fascinating, maybe you can put it, I don't know if you do show notes, but maybe you can put it in the show notes. There's this like fascinating anthropological assessment of how humans interact and primates interact. Those early things are much easier for me, right? Because dialogue, like, they're starting to learn each other. And it's really fun when two people are starting to learn each other. For me, the hard part is the sex, right? Mm-hmm. It's putting sex on the page, making it hot, making it not feel like all the other sex scenes that everybody's read, right? Because remember, romance readers are really voracious. We're reading 10 to 15 books a month. And it seems like there are only so many ways that you can really have two people do it.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, for me...
But we try. We do our best.
I mean, for me, what's so fascinating... Because, like, I've heard romance writers, like, say that before, but for me, I'm just like, well, it's two new characters, so the sex scene is always new, I guess, for me, at least.
Sure. Well, I'm happy to hear you say that. Also, I think the biggest piece of the puzzle is that sex should inform the plot, right? So if you have two new characters in a new scenario, sex will always change people, right? And this is people, you, me, listeners, like, we've all like been in a situation where we've had sex or had some sort of sexual interaction with somebody, and it immediately changes us and the relationship between the two people. And my biggest concern when I'm writing a sex scene is like, where is this sex scene going to take these two people through the journey of the plot?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and well, also, I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up, but, a lot of the books that I read, since it's like $5 and under, there are books that have been published years prior, and I noticed in the sex scenes, consent seems very murky. And I guess what I'm going through right now as a reader is there are so many books that I've loved and that I've read, and I think about the sex scenes now, and I'm like, yikes, that is like very uncomfortable. Like, can I still like these books? Do you know what I mean?
Okay, well, first of all, yes, you can still like these books. That's fine. I think this is where I'm actually really glad I'm here, because this is where I start to think like a knowledge of where the genre came from and how it evolved helps. Consent. So that book that I talked about first, The Flame and the Flower, 1972, the hero rapes the heroine 4 times in the first 100 pages of that book.
Wow.
It is tough. It's tough. I when I read it for the first time, it was the 90s, and honest to God, I don't think I even noticed.
Right.
Like, because consent was murky, that's a great way of framing it. But what's interesting is that now, since then, I've read it multiple times. And Heather, the heroine of that book, every time it happens, thinks of it, you're in her point of view, and she thinks of it as rape. She articulates it as rape. She calls him vocally a rapist to his face. She claims the word and acknowledges the situation. So my instinct, and when I come at the genre as a scholar, I often think about consent as being omnipresent in romance novels from the start.
Okay.
So even if rape was on the page, it was never on the page. I mean, it was never on the page without being acknowledged as such, right? The fact that then Brandon, the hero who did those things, becomes the hero of the book, that's a little more complicated. And, I do think that that's a situation where you have to think about time, right? When you think about 1972, in 1972, married women in America couldn't have their own checking accounts.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't carry their own credit cards. If a married woman was beaten or raped by her husband, she had no legal recourse. Like, it feels like 1972 was so recent, and it was like another time, right?
Yeah.
And if you think about it, like 1972 is when the Equal Pay Act was before Congress. In 1972, Gloria Steinem stood up in front of the DNC and said out loud, if the Democratic Party doesn't do more for women, they're never going to win another election in America. Second wave feminism was happening right at the same time as these books were not only taking off, they were taking off to the tune of 2 million copies a year per title. And so by, 1975, there were, dozens of writers writing these books and millions of women reading them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and the rape that was on the page, the consent, the dubious consent that was on the page was very much, I think, a sort of metaphor for patriarchy, right? Like, this is the story, the arc of the romance novel is the arc of the women's movement, in the sense that the heroine is the hero of the story. If you perceive the heroine as the sort of human hero and the hero as sort of a stand-in for society, it's the battle of women for equality, right? Women for respect, for partnership, for parity, for a sense of identity, for sexual health and sexual identity and sexual control. All of those things. It's romance is about power more than anything else. People think they're silly kissing books, but like, it is 100. The books are 100% about women and power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting because I especially feel so like in this novella that we're reading, and a question that popped up for me with reading the book we're going to review is the author takes like a very like staunch political stance in this book, and just given like the current political landscape we're in now, how divided our country is, like, what role do you think you as a writer and other romance writers like play just given current events?
Romance is just like every other book in the sense that it's a human writing a story about humans.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see how that's not political. I don't see how you can keep it apolitical. I've been on panels over the last couple of years, a lot of panels where writers have sort of hedged this and said, oh, well, I want to acknowledge that my readers may feel different than me politically, or I want to acknowledge that, like, I don't want my books to be a place for politics. Like, there's enough politics in the world. Like, taking politics out of the conversation or out of the text of your book is a political action. And invariably it's an action. It's an act that, only people of privilege can make. Right.
Yeah.
And so for me, and especially with romance, right? Romance is 37% of the paperback fiction market. It's a it's the multi-billion-dollar industry in publishing. It's never talked about because it's, it's because patriarchy, because women. And the reality is, like, it is I think a lot about the idea that, is it possible that reading romance is a subversive act? And is a political act, because what you're doing is you're sort of allowing women to stand at the center of their own fantasy and their own fantasy worlds and their own and experience their own, witness themselves on the page, witness their gaze on the page. And so this is that's political. Putting women at the center stuff is political. I mean, look at the last election, right? A lot of people didn't love that idea. But romance, here we are, right? I mean, look, my politics are very much on my sleeve. They're very much in my books. But it feels to me like I can't speak for other writers, but what I can say is that my work is to make sure that politics are in my books. And I don't mean politics like capital P. I write historical romances in England. I'm not ever going to give you a dissertation on the value or not value of the Tories. But, I think small case P, yeah, those politics need to be in there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I felt that with your last book, like talking about like class and like old school wealth versus new wealth. And like, I did feel a very like, there was a political message, I think, in that book, in Wicked and the Wallflower.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have sort of an origin story, a recent origin story in that I'm known for waking up on November 9th, 2016 and throwing out 275 pages of a book because the hero, I was suddenly aware of the fact that the hero was probably a Trump voter.
Uh-huh.
And so I was like, well, that's unacceptable.
Uh-huh.
He doesn't get to be happy. And I threw the whole thing out and I rewrote the whole book. And so that book, which is called The Day of the Duchess, is and that's, I mean, the politics in that book are very clear because I was working through some stuff during that. Wicked and the Wallflower. So I've never been so grateful it was sort of a perfect storm. The series, The Bare Knuckle Bastards, is about men and a woman who have to pull themselves up literally from the gutter in the 1830s in London. They were poor and they had nothing and they had to built an empire by themselves. And I've never been so happy to not be writing like rich white dudes, who like problems.
Uh-huh.
I was, I mean, yes, they are rich dudes, but they are, they're working class. They live in a working class area. And so I was able to sort of think about class in a different way and think about privilege in a different way in these books. And, and also have people kiss.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Why can't we have both? Why can't we have kissing and politics?
I know. Well, okay, so this is my question for you. Is like, do you think that like, I feel like the romance has had such like a boom recently. Like, you have your column in the Washington Post. There's articles in like Entertainment Weekly, like these like mainstream publications. Do you think that like the romance genre has like made any sort of impact on like other genres?
I hope so. I mean, I actually think romance has had a pretty significant impact on YA. I think I think there's a lot of crossover in terms of like, we love each other a lot. The women who write contemporary YA novels and the women who write romance novels often sort of have an affinity for each other. And I think that's because YA also gets a lot of, negativity from the literati. If anybody knows what it's like to sort of be sat in the corner, right? It's romance, and why is similar. And so I think, and I like to think that like people like Jenny Han, who wrote To All the Boys I've Loved Before, and people like Julie Murphy, who wrote Dumplin', both of which have been turned into like really delightful rom-coms, I feel like romance is a part of their soul. Like romance it's in their DNA. And I love that rom-coms are coming back. I always feel like, and it's hard to sort of imagine a rom-com without romance existing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'm really excited to see how, and I also think romance is really evolving. So because we have such voracious readers, as I mentioned, the writers, I write very slowly. I write a book a year and I write incredibly slowly, but there are so many writers who are writing 6, 8 books a year. They're really sort of feeding the beast, so to speak, the reader beast. And things like Kindle and ebooks have really made a huge difference because women writers, male writers, women, female writers, like queer writers, we're all able to write our own story and our own truth through the lens of romance and find our audience so much more easily than, 20 years ago when, maybe you got a publishing contract and if you didn't get to put your book out there, you didn't get to find your people. Mm-hmm. And so there is something very powerful, I think, about speed, about the ability to reach our people, the ability to tell myriad stories in a short amount of time. And I think what that's doing, romance has always been has always led the curve publishing wise. We've led the format curve. We were the first genre to really embrace ebooks. I like to think sort of, we have miles to go before we sleep when it comes to intersectionality. But I think the genre is really evolving, and we're evolving because we have to, because romance iterates on society over and over again. And that's because it's for women, right? And women are a lot of society, and we're the only ones who tell those stories in a constant way.
So I think I might know the answer to this question, but do you think men benefit from reading romance novels?
Yes. Find the clitoris. Find it. Learn how to use it.
Yes. I think what I've been liking lately is books that I've been reading where like men ask questions of like, is this where it is? Yeah. Like, I've just been loving that lately.
Yeah. I mean, that's it's a nice joke that I wouldn't tell at my mother's cocktail parties. But like the reality is that, of course, with men, there's this guy. I used to work in education, and I knew this really brilliant. I'm not gonna cite him because, the audience. But I knew a really brilliant teacher who worked with middle schoolers and then became a sort of like a superstar in middle school education. And if you know anything about education, you know that nobody thinks about middle school because nobody thinks about middle school. It's a terrible thing. But he worked with kids who struggled to read, and he told this great story about how he was talking to a boy who was in middle school, and he was like having trouble with his girlfriend, and he said, she just won't stop reading romance novels. She reads romance novels all the time. She has a book in her hand, and I hate it. And this educator said, well, what's the problem with that? And the boy said, well, it's not like you could fix a toilet or anything when you're done with one. Oh. Right. And my friend, this man said to him, well, yeah, but you might understand your girlfriend a little more. And it had never sort of occurred to this. I mean, obviously he's 12, like what occurs to a 12-year-old, but I love that as a sort of metaphor for the genre. Is like, I think men are really threatened. I think a lot of men are threatened by romances. They don't know what's in there. Is it porn? I don't know. Like, is it setting high expectations? Like, how will I ever compete? I don't know. I do a podcast about another romance series, Cressley Cole's Immortals After Dark series. It's literally like supernatural heroes who are there to save the world. And my husband listens to it religiously every week and is like, oh my God, I can't believe that this is what you're thinking, what you're like constantly reading and thinking about. But it's really fascinating because like even in our conversations, he'll like reference one of the heroes and be like, I'm not doing that today. Like, I'm not going to be that guy today. Like, that's the fantasy that you have. Too bad. And I'm not even talking about sex, but like, but there's this sense, I think men are, look, society does a number on men too. It does more of a number on women, I think, but like it does a number on men. Men are worried, I think, a lot about masculinity and their relationship to women and control and power. And the reality is that every relationship is better with equity and parity of power, and every relationship is better when both partners are having orgasms. I mean, like, it's just true.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't be afraid. Go read a romance novel.
I know. It's so funny you say that because, I mean, I live in Los Angeles, and so, obviously I, work with men who will, like, rib at me for reading a romance novel, but then they'll, like, go back to talking about Star Wars as if, like, do you know what I mean? And it's like, okay, yeah. I guess I'm the dum-dum, but you're, like, reading the novelization of, like, one of the prequels of Star Wars, and it's like,
yeah. But what's fascinating about that is, like, the heroic figure, right? Like the hero's journey is so baked into romance novels too. Yeah. Like how many romances are about like the cold, like impenetrable hero who like has to face the whole world on his own. And then like he falls in love, and not only does he still triumph, right? Like it's happily ever after. He's going to win. They're going to beat the big bad. He is going to triumph and also have like a partner who gets him and cares for him and like wants to triumph with him. Yeah. I'm like, what's wrong with you dudes? Why isn't there more kissing in Star Wars?
Yes, thank you.
I was so mad about that last movie. I was like, there's like no kissing in this movie at all.
I know, and there was like so much tension between Ray and Adam Driver, you know, like and it was like, God, you just want to see them make out.
Yeah, for sure. They're totally gonna bone. Like, but you know what? It's not gonna be on screen.
No, probably not, because it's like Disney.
Patriarchy. So.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I bet you someone is drawing pictures right now. Someone's writing stuff right now where they are getting really dirty. But I'm on deadline.
I can't go down that rabbit hole.
So I hope you guys enjoyed part 1 of this interview. After I listened to it, I kept thinking about like old-timey grocery people who were like stacking inventory and being like, oh, this is a box of noodles. This is a box of noodles. This is a romance novel. This is a potato. Simpler times. So stay tuned next week when Sarah and I review the purse-sized novella, Loving the Secret Billionaire. This has been Becky Feldman with Too Stupid to Live. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great rest of your day.